Good evening. I call this meeting to order. Would you please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance led by Mr. Mako?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mako. Jeremy, roll call.
Greenberg.
Here.
Hicks.
Here.
Mako.
Here.
Shapaka.
Here.
Suriano.
Here.
Tamarkin.
Here.
Wester.
Here. Is there any additions or corrections to the agenda that we're aware of and brought up at the last minute? All right, hearing none. Moving to the approval of the minutes. Minutes have been set out, reviewed. Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second, Wester.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. We have a motion by Mr. Hicks and a seconded by Mr. Wester. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jeremy, roll call.
Hicks.
Yes.
Wester.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Motion passes. We had a second meeting minutes for the Planning Commission for 4/12/2023. It has been set out. Is there a motion for approval on those?
So moved by Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. My left ear is a little stronger than my right, Mr. Greenberg. We have a motion by Mr. Hicks and a second by Mr. Wester. Is there any discussion on the Planning Commission minutes? Hearing none. Jeremy?
Hicks.
Yes.
Wester.
Yes.
Mako.
Yes.
Shapaka.
Yes.
Suriano.
Yes.
Tamarkin.
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes.
Very good. We're now entering the portion of the applicants and speakers, and we're looking for our city attorney to swear the people who are going to speak in tonight. Mr. Roth.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are now at the public hearing portion of the meeting. The public hearing will operate as follows. Administrative staff will make a presentation or comment on the application. The applicant or their representative may then make a presentation or comment on the application. Public comment will then be open for 3 minutes allowed per speaker. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. Speakers must complete a speaker slip and come to the podium and state their name. The applicant will then be given 10 minutes to comment. Additional time may be requested. Permission is at the discretion of the chair. If there is more than one application pending for a particular address, the presentation on each application may be consolidated and presented as one. At this time, will persons wishing to present testimony this evening please rise and raise your right hand to be sworn in? Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you are about to provide will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, state I do. I do. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. We now enter the application portion. Our first applicant is for one church. There are 2 items under that application, one for a variance and one for a design review. I will read both as an entirety and kind of treat them as once, but about them as needed. Variance application number V0008-2023 to consider a variance application to vary chapter 1163.08H, interior landscaping requirements of the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna for property located at 817 North Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-004-349, current zoning RID, one church, David Domin, applicant. Design review application number DR-0010-2023 to consider a design review application for landscaping and others for 1.2 acres at 817 North Hamilton Road, parcel ID 025-004-349, current zoning RID, one church, David Domin, applicant. Apologize for the last name. Correct me when you get up. With that, I'm going to turn over the portion for administration to give its presentation. Mr. Blackford.
Thank you kindly, Mr. Chair. On the screen right now, we have the location and zoning map, and this area in purple on the west side of Hamilton Road, this is one church. It is zoned RID, which is Restricted Institutional District. It's just north of the intersection here of Johnstown and Hamilton Road. We'll show some other maps here in a little bit, drill down, but this is the area, general area of where the improvements are proposed. And this property right here, a little bit of green and red, and adjacent property is the Villages of Castle Pines. You might recall this property coming before Planning Commission. We've seen some parking lot additions, some signage variances, and a few other requests over the last 5 or so years. So tonight, 2 applications, design review applications. They're expanding the parking lot, 35,000 or so square feet of pavement. That's about 3/4 of an acre or so, 114 additional parking spaces. That brings the grand total to 561 parking spaces on site. This proposed parking lot addition does abut residential properties, and our code does have language about screening along residential properties of parking lots. This request does meet that screening standard. You might be asking yourself, what is that screening standard? It says that it has to be 80% opacity, and you can meet that by having plantings or a fence. And they do meet that. They're planting 41 trees, and there's also some shrubs to beautify the parking lot along Hamilton Road. As I alluded to, here is a map that goes in a little bit more detail. Again, this is the northeast corner of the site along Hamilton Road. This is the area where the parking lot addition is proposed. And right here you can see some of the units here within the Villages of Castle Pines. And there's also an entry road right here and then some more units in that location. Here is the landscape plan right here on the west side. This is the area that the screening is required. They're planting trees in this area. Screening is not required in this area because the code says if there's a right-of-way in that location, you don't have to have screening. So it's really only on this west side of the property. Here you can see from their site plan, this is what I guess I would call sort of their main entrance, and the majority of their parking is to the south of this area, or at least one of their main entrances. So again, this is green space. This would be additional parking if approved. Here's some images from their application package. It shows a little bit what it would look like with those additional plantings. And I think this is the west property line, the before and after here. I know I said that 80% opacity. The code says that if you're planting, that what you plant has to be 6 feet in height within 5 years. So you have 5 years to get to 6 feet in height and reach 80% opacity. And again, here's some other images before and after, and I think these areas in red are what the planted trees might look like. There is one variance request. As I was talking to council on Monday night, this is our frequent flyer for commercial properties. This is part of the code change. This is the code provision that says when you have 2 rows of parking, you have to have a 10-foot wide landscape island. So what it would say is all along here, you would need to have a 10-foot row of shrubs and landscape island. They are requesting that variance, and that is a code section that we are taking forward hopefully for changing here soon. Design review criteria. This is a very simple, straightforward request. It's not a new building. There's not a whole bunch of code. It is within Design Review District 3 and some code provisions here maybe that are relevant. Parking areas shall add visual interest to the development. Entrances and exits from sites should be well decorated and landscaped. Earth mounting and trees should be considered to reduce noise and impact. Generous use of vegetation encouraged to produce natural atmosphere and create a subtle transition of varying uses. The variance criteria, special circumstances applying to the land, building, or use, granting the variance necessary for the preservation of property rights. And the third one, and what I would deem the most important, is if granting this, would it have a detrimental impact on public welfare? And it is a landscaping variance that they are requesting, but it's an internal landscaping variance, not the variance along the property line. Staff, the request does meet, all applicable code sections except for the one code provision that we are proposing to remove. My understanding is that there is a need for additional parking on site. I think the church has grown over the last several years. That's why they come before us for, additional parking. I think this is maybe the second or third request we had for more parking. The building facade has changed over the years. Like I alluded to, all screening and landscaping requirements are met. Again, 80% opacity, minimum 6 feet in height. Those code requirements, again, I would just throw out that, if there's some issues maybe about whether or not that would be sufficient to screen, the code would also allow, in lieu of vegetation, 6-foot fence would be permissible as well, just something to consider. And that's it. That's all I have, Mr. Chair. Back to you.
Mr. Blackford.
Thank you.
We now open the public portion. I have 2 speaker slips here for one church. Would Kathy Schaefer Fletcher please come up, state your name and address, and address all your comments to the board?
Yeah, this is Kathy Schaefer Fletcher. I'm at 785 North Hamilton Road. I'm on the south side of them. My question mainly is to David Domain. They have posts on the south side. What are they doing there? Since they're putting the parking lot, it sounds like up by Castle Pine. They put in a gravel thing to go onto the grass, and then they have the post in the yard. And they put
I'm going to need clarification on the post, but you're on the south side?
I'm on the south side. I'm at the intersection. So,
Hold on, I think the
I'm
applicant
confused.
needs to speak before the public. This isn't the applicant.
Mr. Domain.
because I'm confused, because I thought the parking lot was going in by me.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford.
Yep, sorry.
I want to get a clarification on that so that the applicant can address it. So you have a post on the south side?
They have posts on the south side where there's gravel, like where they can drive up onto the grass.
So south side of the lot that we're looking at?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So here, so we want to develop this with those pieces.
Well, that's all right. No, David.
Not that section,
I
on down.
understand. Give me a moment. I think you're probably talking about this area.
So you're speaking about the grass,
Right there. Yeah,
Grassy
there's-
knoll on the
there's
south of the
a
entrance.
posted area. They put post up, and they put a part where there's gravel where they can go into the grass.
all right, hopefully we'll get some clarification on that. We'll call you back up here in a minute.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. David, would you like to?
Mr. Dominy is not here tonight. My name is Shane Hart. I'm from One Church. I'm speaking on his behalf. And
Could you, I noticed that you did, were sworn in. Can you come up to the microphone and state your name and address them?
Yes, my name is Shane Hart. I am representing One Church. I'm the operations director there, 817 North Hamilton Road. Mr. Dominy is not able to be here tonight, so I'm the representative for the church.
Well, you want to address what Mr. Blackford
Yes.
expressed about the project?
Yes, absolutely. Our reason for wanting to expand this parking is, as was mentioned a moment ago, is we have definitely grown. Just since December, our average attendance has grown by 25%, which is about 400 people. So we are having to do a lot of creative parking solutions, including parking off-site. The addition of this parking lot will allow us to no longer park as many cars on the grass. So it is in the interest of the convenience of our members and attenders, but it's also a safety issue as we have a number of people that are parking off-site in other locations and either walking or carpooling or taking a shuttle bus across Hamilton Road to attend the services. And this additional 114 parking spaces is also a safety issue because we'll be parking people on site versus people having to park off-site or find other ways to get to the church on Sunday mornings. Plus, it's a parking lot that's only going to be used primarily on Sunday mornings. Very rarely would it be used any other day of the week.
Okay. And any other comments?
I have no other comments at this moment. Happy to answer any questions you may have. And we have our engineer from WattCon here as well to answer any very specific technical questions that may arise.
All right. Thank you. Have a seat. We're going to go back to the public speaker. If there's anybody from the public, and if Kathy can step back up and just state your name real quick, since
Kathy Schaefer.
we have your name.
Fletcher.
So your question to the applicant is, he's not developing the south portion of the drive?
Right. I mean, I understand they need parking because I watch these people go across the street every day. And I grew up on that intersection. I know how dangerous it is. I just thought the parking lot was coming to the south side because of the post. I didn't realize it was going north.
All right, well, we will address that question. Thank you.
Thank you.
We have a second speaker for this is a Robert Genton or Canton. Yes. Please step up, state your name and address, and address your comments to the commission.
Sure. Good afternoon or good evening. My name is Bob Genton, and I represent the Gahanna Village at Castle Pines. I am currently on the condominium board as their treasurer. I am representing my condo board. We have 5 concerns with the design that we would like to address to the commission. The first and foremost, we have no objection to putting in a parking lot. We know that one church is expanding and does need more parking. Our first concern is how the spaces are arranged. If you look at the diagram if you could pull it up, the diagram of the parking lot itself, you see those spaces, for the most part, face north-south. And we would like those spaces to be redesigned to face east-west. And the reason for that is the parking for those spaces numbers 21 through 45, if people park there, especially at night, the headlights of the vehicles will shine directly into the unit owners' homes. And on the other side of that right-of-way entryway are their bedrooms and living areas. So we are concerned about the light pollution that may cause. Also, we're concerned a little bit about the privacy issue. If some of the cars parked there, they're facing our condominium property for the most part. Concerned, no telling why they're parked there. I'm sure that may be a minor point, but it is a concern of our residents that people, strangers, are looking at their properties. So we would like to see that designed to face east-west. The second issue is the use of the barriers. I know they have the issues of the trees along the west side and spaced in on the north side. We would prefer to see the shrubbery, the barrier shrubbery that they have addressed on the east side to apply to both the west and the north side. Lower trees like arborvitaes in there would certainly block a lot of those headlights should the design go forward with the north and south parking space design. So that is something we would like to consider as well. Also, if you notice on the west side, spaces around 12 through 15, those definitely would have to have arborvitaes in order to block the view of the people sitting out on the decks of that adjacent building, and it would be a privacy issue and a concern to our homeowners. The third item is, and I believe it's covered in the design, is the drainage. We want to make sure that the drainage is proper and is away from our property, and as a result of their cutting and filling and shaping of the parking lot, that there is no standing water as a result of the containment of elevation within within the property, and we have no standing water on our side of the property line. The fourth issue is, in the past, they've installed outside loudspeakers, so we want to make sure that there are no additional loudspeakers. It became a noise issue. The church has done a great job of abating that. We just want to make sure that that stays that way. And lastly, the lighting that they would install in that new parking lot, make sure it does not affect or infringe in the property area of the adjacent buildings. Those are our 5 comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Would the applicant like to come up and take a few questions and respond?
Sean Lanning, Watcon Engineering, 83 Shaw Avenue.
Please state your name again.
Sean Lanning, Watcon Engineering, 83 Shaw Avenue.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, I wrote down his concerns here. Well, for one, just to start with the variance that we're asking for, it's not the largest area of parking lot, so in order for snow removal as well as just traffic flow in general to move through there, that's why that's really the main reason we're requesting that variance, and also the landscaping that was supposed to be in that area is just outside the same amount of trees. There's a calculation. The same amount of trees are just on the outside of that area, so, or bushes and everything else that we need. So then the north and south parking, that's, again, this isn't the biggest parking lot ever, and it's just, this is the most efficient way to do that. And we have worked with staff to add landscaping. There's already a significant amount of trees and brush and different things along that north property line. That's why I'm only showing a minimal amount of trees, because if you look at the elevation view of all that, there's actually a decent amount of trees. Now, we will put in everything that we need to put in to make sure that the neighbors are taken care of. One church has been a good neighbor, and they certainly desire to continue to be a good neighbor. So they will do what they have to do. Trees are easy, so we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the neighbors are taken care of. And we'll start with what they install, and then if for some reason there's some complaints, then we'll address that at that time. So, let's see, the drainage, the next step of this thing is final engineering for this parking lot, so it'll be taken care of by the final engineering staff, the staff that reviews all that stuff. So it's certainly something that pops up in every single meeting I ever go to. It is not going to infringe on the neighbors at all. And matter of fact, their drainage from their site goes into our pond on our site anyway. So if it does somehow go through there, but it will not. It'll get down there within our site. There are no additional outside speakers at all either in this area, and the lighting that is going to be installed in this area, it is like the rest of the parking lot on a timer, so it'll go off at 9 p.m. anyways, and it's within the code. They're the foot candles and all that kind of stuff. I don't do those things, but it's all per code. And and again, it's also going to be in the final engineering plans and stuff like that too. So it'll all be reviewed by the engineering staff here, and it'll be per code. So I think that addresses all of his concerns that he spoke of. So, but I can.
All right,
answer
Sean,
that.
if you want to stay there a second.
Sure.
We'll close the public portion and now open up questions up to the commission. Mr. Hicks?
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. Lanning. A question for the representative from One Church regarding some usage questions. Outside of Sunday morning worship, what are some typical uses of the, is it 24/7? What would be some typical uses during the week?
Yeah, most of the time, Shane Hart, by the way, answering the questions. Most of the time, the events that take place there are a couple of hundred people versus several hundred to over 1,000. So that level of parking is usually much closer to the building. But we do have groups that meet there 4 to 5 nights per week. So we've got group meetings, youth meetings. We've got meeting for people with special needs that takes place there. We do have a few events a year which are a little bit larger. For instance, in February, we held what's called Night to Shine in partnership with the Tim Tebow Foundation, which is a prom for people with special needs. And we did have over 1,000 people on property that night. So that would be a case where that upper parking lot would probably be used in the evening, but that would be one of the very, very few exceptions where that would be used at night. Most of the time, that parking lot's only going to be used during the day and primarily only for our largest gathering events, which are primarily Sunday morning, 9, 10:30, and noon.
Great, thank you. One additional question, Mr. Chair, is it fair to say, Mr. Lanning, that the reorienting of the parking lot would cause you not to be able to have as many parking spaces as needed for the project?
That is correct.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely maximizes it the way I have it right now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Mr. Wester?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. On drawing 5 of 10, the west property line, can you call that up, Mr. Blackford?
Is it one of the images I have? I'm not sure what 5 of 10 is.
I think there's 6 photos in there. One's the before and one's the after. I'm looking at the after for the west property line, the lower left-hand corner there, or left-hand side. Can you blow that up or not?
That's all we got.
That's all we got, okay. When I look at that, the west property line, are those arborvitaes that will be planted there?
Yes, that's a graphic representation of what we were going to plant there. I've since worked with staff, and I forget the young lady's name, but we decided to put.
Could you speak into the mic, please?
Sure. Maybe it's not working. Yeah, that is what I proposed at first. That picture is from the first submittal. Since then, I've worked with staff, and we decided that the young lady that I worked with wanted to offset different kinds of bushes. She told me which arborvitaes and which evergreens that she wanted, and then we decided to offset those so that there would actually be more opacity that way.
Well, using a little license here, those plantings appear to be about 8 or 10 foot tall. They almost reach the eaves of the building behind it. What will actually go in there? Will they be a 3-foot arborvitae, 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot?
It'll be 6 foot minimum at installation.
Okay. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. Mr. Martin?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a couple questions real quick. So do you have a lighting plan submitted or in the works?
We did do, a different company did do one. I don't know if it's part of this up on the screen or not, but we did do one, yes.
Okay.
Or David had one done.
And would it be a correct assumption that that lighting plan shows there's not going to be any bleeding off into those adjacent properties?
That's right. It's definitely within, tolerance or code or whatever that is. I don't do those too much myself, so I don't understand all the foot candles and all different things like that. So so yes, it certainly would be per code, and lights will be per city standard and everything else.
And the next question, again, you kind of, just for clarification, goes back to the storm drainage. So you mentioned that it's going to be essentially kept on site and draining into that pond. Is it going to be going into existing conduit that? If you could pull, there you go. Is it going to be going into an existing conduit system that's already there in the existing parking lot? I assume it's going to be probably going underneath the parking lot that's already there.
You know what, we were too busy, so we had coordinated with do that final engineering, and I haven't it is done. It's just waiting on us to get approval for this, and I haven't really even looked at it yet, to be honest with you. That's the next step I'll be involved with, but yeah, I'm not sure if they're tearing up any more storm or just draining it through the rest of the parking lot. I'm not really sure right now.
Okay. But you are going to run those stormwater
Yeah,
calculations?
but it'll be, yeah, oh yeah, it's already done. Actually, it's already been submitted to the city. It's just waiting on, they won't review it, the engineering staff won't review it until this plan gets approved.
Understood. Yeah, thank you. Those are the questions I had.
Thanks, Mr. McHugh. Mr. Greenberg?
No questions, the others have asked mine.
Mr. Soriano?
Same. The questions are answered.
Mr. Larkin?
I actually do have a few. I'd like to go back to the lighting. You're used a lot mostly on Sunday mornings, every now and then when you have your big events at night. First of all, I assume the lights in there will be pole lights. Will they be on a separate meter so that they only need to go on when you need to use that lot on a 7 nights a week? The lights will not be turned on?
Yes, we do have our parking lot currently banked into different meters, and so I have not seen the electrical plans on this, but my assumption and the conversations we've had internally are that, yes, this would be on its own circuit, separate bank.
So based on your comments earlier, if I was a neighbor, it'd be fair to assume that, those lights might only be on a handful of nights a year.
Correct, especially past 9 p.m. It'd be very rare that they would ever be on past 9
Or
p.m.
even in the winter where it gets dark at 6 or 7.
They would not be on every night, is my understanding of how the plan is. I do have the lighting plan here. It's from Cooper Lighting Solutions, and I can't tell from here on the circuit and the timer, but if that is something that needs to be done, that's a very easy thing to do, to put it on its own separate timer, and it's only turned on the nights that it's needed.
I think that's certainly fair to the residents that
I agree.
the lights are only on when you need the lights. Talked a little bit about existing trees, so that the graphic we're showing here that's on the screen now shows the new trees that you're adding. I don't remember the number, 47 trees or whatever being added. But it looks like there's some existing trees that'll stay also on top of the trees that are being added.
Yes, correct.
Yes. Yeah, that is correct. There's a couple of trees in the middle of the parking lot that, of course, need to be removed, but yes, anything on the perimeter, we won't take them out at all for any reason.
Okay. Even though those are taller trees, so they're not going to do a lot to block light because the forestation is going to be higher, but it'll certainly add to the aesthetics of the whole design. And my last comment is, you mentioned that, to be a good neighbor, you'd be willing to consider maybe some additional screening on the north side. I guess it's more a comment than a question. I would consider it.
Yeah, I mean, we'll put in what we feel is correct, and if that works, the city, neighbors, whoever, we can work from there, too, because it's tough when you're just filling in. All they're really going to do is just fill in the more open areas. So their landscape guy will add trees where they think to create the 80% opacity and be good neighbors and, screen everything. They understand that there's people's bedrooms and homes and different things right there. And again, it's not going to be used as like we've all been saying, it's not going to be used at night too often as well. So it's not going to be too intrusive. But yeah, we'll work with staff and the neighbors to make sure that everybody's happy at the end of all this.
Because our code says because there's a road there, you're really not obligated to put more plantings in on that side, but just on the other side of the road, and it's a small driveway road.
Right,
There are
understood.
people's houses, living rooms and bedrooms, so I'll just ask you to be a good neighbor there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say one other thing you're correct, most of those trees are taller, but there are some shorter shrubs already there. And this drawing shows putting in those extra ones to help fill in some of those gaps. And if that's not enough, then we'll look at it, and as needed, and especially as requested by our neighbors, we will do everything we can to accommodate.
Great. Mr. Chair, that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Barkin. I'm going to follow up on that landscaping. So have you in the past added trees at their request in shrubbery? Have you done that before?
Honestly, I've not in the couple of years that I've been in this current role. I'm not sure about previous to that. I'm not even aware of any requests where they've asked for additional shrubs or anything like that. So I can't speak to that directly.
Well, we definitely take, like, the sentiment that you would add.
Yes.
If it is approved, you would add additional being a good neighbor.
Yes, we definitely want to be a good neighbor to Castle Pines.
Quick question for Mr. Blackford. Do we not normally get the lighting layout? Was that in our package? I didn't.
It's in the package.
It
Yep.
is in the
Yep,
package?
and it meets code. I think it
Good.
was 0.1 foot candle along the property line. It's just
And it
the
has the
smallest
cutoff
foot
light
candle
fixtures.
measurement.
Cutoff fixtures, all the lights going down, and nothing's creeping off onto the other property?
If it's 0.1, that's the smallest number that I've ever seen. I didn't do the review, but I looked at it beforehand and saw where it was 0.1. The code says 0.5 foot candles adjacent to residential properties. Used to say 1, so we lowered it next to residential.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. The paving, so currently, is it all surface runoff to the pond? Do you have any underground storage or collection?
Yeah, there's
catch
no
basins?
underground storage or anything like that yet. I'll have to check the engineering plans, like I said, they are done, I do have them, they've actually been submitted, but I'd have to check to see exactly what.
But currently, the parking lot is
Oh,
just all
currently,
surface?
yeah. Yeah.
Just surface, it all goes to
No,
the pond?
we did the engineering for the main big parking lot in the middle, and there's some catch basins and things in there that go through the parking lot.
So we definitely want to address the concerns that the neighbor had. That
Oh,
we
yeah,
want to collect it.
there's no way
ponding.
we'll back up drainage on their property, there's not a chance.
So currently, and it's funny, I drive by there to Home Depot all the time. I didn't know that grass was there because I've always seen cars on Sunday morning there. Why are we not paving the south end? And you park there currently. Is there a reason why we're,
Yeah, the main reason we park on the south side right now is because that area stays currently drier because it sits up higher. And because of the trees that are in the middle part of that northeast, it makes it hard to efficiently park cars currently. But with this plan, that will resolve most of that. We are looking at, as we continue to grow, if we're going to need to add on the south end as well. We're just not prepared with those engineering drawings and to submit that at this time.
and privacy issue, barrier? That answers all my questions. Thank you. Do I have a motion for the approval of the variance application?
Mr. Chair,
I make a motion, I'm sorry.
I apologize. I know this isn't our normal procedure, but it was something that was brought up earlier that I don't believe is correct, and I don't know how germane it is to this discussion, but talked about arborvitaes. I don't believe there's any arborvitae shown on any landscape plan. There's spruce trees and deciduous trees. So if there is an arborvitae component to this, that is not shown on the landscape plan. So I will put that up here. Like I said, I apologize, but I don't want there to be any confusion. Evergreen trees, minimum 6 feet. Then I think right up here it tells us what those are. Evergreen trees, planting Norway, spruce, or white pine. I'm not a city forester, so I'm not very versed in this. I just know that those are different than arborvitaes. So
They were arborvitaes at first, and then when I worked with staff, they wanted the evergreen trees, because they have like a cone-shaped canopy. Then the trees themselves, the deciduous trees, they have a upper top canopy, so it really creates, and then those two things are offset, so it actually creates a better wall.
yeah, it may be better. I don't know. I just want to make sure that Planning Commission was aware and that the residents were aware that that's not actually what is shown on their landscape plan, and this is what gets approved. This. So just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
apologize.
Blackford, for the clarification on that. Do I have a motion for the variance application?
Got a question for Mr. Wester first.
Oh, we're back to comments. Yes, Ms. Wester.
So what are we planning?
Well, it does state on the landscape plan here that is submitted, it's the evergreens. Again, I forget which one she chose, but whatever the young lady I worked with from staff, she gave me two options, so I put both options be planted on the plans. And same thing with the deciduous trees. She gave me 2 that she liked, so I put them both on there as well. So we can put a mix of all of those, just so that it's a variety.
What do the residents think of that?
The public portion is closed at the moment, but you can shake your head, give us an idea.
That will not work. Those trees will grow up, and then the whole thing, they grow up, and they die underneath. And underneath is all open. So there's no protection from us. Those plant this long stuff we put in that area.
Thank you. Moving forward, hearing no other questions or comments, do we have a motion for approval?
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for variance V-0008-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. Second?
Second, Mako.
Thank you, Mr. Mako. We have a motion by Mr. Tamarkin and seconded by Mr. Mako. Is there any discussion on the motion? Yes, Mr. Greenberg.
Mr. Chair, there was discussion on this issue. Mr. Tamarkin had comments on lighting. There's been comments on plantings. Is there anything that the commission that we should amend to this proposal so that the lighting is the way we discussed, instead it's not just, hey, we're going to do it? That is something that Mr. Blackford, the lighting gets approved by the city?
It's part of the design review package, and that does meet code.
Okay,
There's no
so
variance.
There's
It's-
nothing
Correct.
for us to do there. What about the plantings? Because that was, I guess he was referring to the city. giving-
Yeah, there's definitely plenty of wiggle room to condition the variance or the design review. The screening requirement, the code allows for multiple ways of meeting the screening requirement. Planning Commission can always require more than what the code does.
And I guess the third question is on drainage. That's reviewed by the engineer.
Totally separate process.
Out
Yep.
of our purview.
Correct.
Just wanted to be clear about that. So we could make, I guess, an amendment on the plantings if we so desired.
Didn't we already have the motion in a second, though?
Yes.
Yeah. Before there were conditions put on there.
But the motion was just for the variance, and the variance is for the 10-foot strip between the parking.
Okay.
So
We haven't done with the design review, so if you want to make conditions on that, make sure you do it before there's a motion.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Roth. Mr. Greenberg,
I'm good.
you're good?
Yep.
Any other discussion? Roll call?
Tamarkin,
yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Shapaka,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Hicks.
Yes.
Motion passes. Design review application. Before we make a motion, is there an amendment or a correction that we would like to add to that motion prior?
Well, I guess the discussion, Mr. Chair, was about adding what arborvitae's to further block the headlights from coming in to the condominiums, is it to the north? So I'll make an amendment that the applicant work with the city to look at adding that type of shrub or planting to block the lighting coming from the
So,
parking
To
area.
clarify that, to use the screening that's on the west side of the lot should also be incorporated on the north side of the lot?
That would be simplification there, yes, Mr. Chair.
I think we have a little confusion on what's really on the west side of the lot.
It's what is
Yeah,
the
this-
city is required.
But it's the trees. It's the pine trees and the spruce trees.
I would like the amendment to specify that the plantings would include a minimum height of a 6-foot arborvitae. An arborvitae is considerably different than a pine tree. And over time, they will grow to 20-foot high and provide a nice block, view block, if you will.
Is there a count of something, or?
I don't have that many fingers.
And that would be on the west and the north
North
side?
side. Yes, both.
Anywhere where there's head-in parking? Mr. Hicks, do you have a motion in mind for this?
I don't. I would not be in favor of a motion to amend, so have at it.
Well, the motion is going to have an amendment to it.
I understand, but if you're asking me to offer one,
All right. So I have a motion for the design review application as amended, requested by the board for the landscape screening to the north to complement what is currently shown on the west and to add arborvitaes to create that additional screening to the west and the north for the design review application DR 0010-2023. Do I have a motion?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I make a motion for DR-0010-2023 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. DeMarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Wester.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. Is there any discussion on the amended motion?
I was just going to add, I'm in favor of the motion. I'm in favor in the additional landscaping. I don't know that it is necessary, assuming there were conversations with the applicant and the city around what was needed for appropriate screening. So either way, I'm in favor of, I don't think the additional landscaping is going to be a detriment. So I'm in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Sariano.
so Mr. Chair, I think you need to have the amended motion, the motion to amend first. Mr. Tamarkin just jumped right to the main motion.
So we have to make a
So
motion.
we're looking for a motion to amend the design review application DR 0010-2023. Is there a second? Or do I hear a motion for the amendment portion?
So moved. Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Is there a second?
Second, Wester.
Thank you, Mr. Wester. So we have a motion to amend the design review application by Mr. Greenberg and seconded by Mr. Wester. Is there any discussion on the amendment portion? Yes, Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm not in favor of amending the motion. I don't think it's necessary at all. The applicant stated they work with the city, whether it's the forester or whatever the correct title is, and it amended or changed their application to reflect what the city told them. For us to now reverse that, I think is inappropriate. So I would not be in favor of amending the application.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Any other comments?
Same as before, I agree with Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Sariano. Hearing no additional comments, roll call on the amendment.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yeah, no.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Hicks,
No.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca.
Yes. The amendment approved. Do I have a motion for the design review application, DR 0010-2023,
As amended.
as amended? Thank you, Mr. Hicks.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion for DR-0010-2023 as amended.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. Is there a second?
Second, Suriano.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, roll call.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Suriano,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you for coming, and as you heard, even though we made the amendment, we don't feel it was needed, but it's written in the books anyway. Good luck, and thanks good luck with the expansion. Thank you. Amendments. Next applicant is Big Sky Realty for a variance and a design review application. I will read both in its entirety before we proceed. Variance application V-0009-2023 to recommend approval to council, a variance application to vary section 1149.03K, development standards, screening provisions of the codified ordinances of the city of Gahanna for the property located at 307-319 West Johnstown Road, parcel ID number 025-000849, current zoning CC, proposed zoning MFRD, Big Sky Realty, Mitch Rubin applicant. Design review application number DR-0011-2023 to consider a design review application for landscaping for property located at 307-319 West Johnstown Road, parcel ID number 025-000849, current zoning CC, proposed zoning MFRD, Big Sky Realty, Mitch Rubin applicant. We now have a presentation by the administration. Mr. Blackford.
Just to clarify a few things, this isn't a zoning change, so there shouldn't be anything in an ordinance that says it's CC2. This was rezoned in 2020, 2021. And then I think the other ordinance said that this was a recommendation to city council, and this would actually be planning commission. So just a couple of clarifications there. Yeah, so this property on the screen here in red, this is the subject property. This site is under construction as we speak. This was before planning commission for rezoning in 2020. It was rezoned in 2021. Final development plan, design review, variances in 2022. No, 2021, sorry. It is zoned MFRD. It's not going to change. Johnstown Road in this location, Stigler. So again, it's just close to the Stigler, Johnstown Road intersection. And really where we're talking about tonight is this it's the east side of the property in this area. And this strip of land is only wide enough for a residential driveway, but it is zoned residential. And as part of that, there is a screening requirement. So the applicant is requesting to modify their previously approved design review. They no longer are requesting to provide a privacy fence in this area. And again, that's a portion of the east property line, not the entirety of it, not the entirety of the property. 55 feet of fencing, 13 spruce trees, now arborvitaes to be planted along the property line there. And that will provide partial screening. Here's a site plan, north, Johnstown Road. So here in red indicates where the fencing will remain. And then here in green are the general location of where those plantings will be located. This property right here is commercial, but there's this little strip of land with a residential driveway for a large lot that goes back here. One of the only situations I'm aware of, except for this other one right here. So there's actually two identical situations of a residential driveway that are creating, from a zoning code standpoint, the requirement to have buffering and screening. And they're only requesting to have the vegetation here. Unlike, this is very similar to our last project, but it's different. The code's a little bit different. And this one has to be a continuous. It can't be with plantings, it would have to be continuous. They just want to have trees. So it doesn't meet the continuous planting requirement of the code. So again, 15-foot landscape buffer with continuous 6-foot high screen, 13 spruce trees instead of that continuous high screen that would normally be met, or previously was going to be met with a fence. And again, it's only in this location. It's only this little strip of green piece of property, which is not used for any residential purposes other than a driveway. You might be curious, oh, wait a second. Here's, if you drove by the property yesterday, you may have seen something that looks like this. Again, it's under construction here. This angle, this is actually the residential driveway. This mailbox, I don't know if that mailbox is for the residential or the commercial, that's right over here. I will exit out of this real quickly. And I will just share, if you're curious, here's a Google Street View image. This is from October of last year. You can see some construction. If we venture here just to the east, you can see this residential driveway. This is what technically is residential, which would require all the buffering and screening. This property right here is commercial. So if this little strip of land was here, we wouldn't be here tonight. And again, we can even go down here. This image is from several years ago, but again, this goes all the way back here. Again, there is no residential. So granting this variance in staff's opinion would have no detrimental effect whatsoever on any surrounding properties. It's really more of a code situation there that requires the screening. Again, very minor in nature. This is a very special circumstance. I'm not familiar with too many, properties that are, have 10-foot strips of land that are zoned residential that cause the need for, significant amount of buffering and landscaping. So with that, staff would recommend approval of both of these requests as presented. Turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. And looks like the applicant is here, Mr. Mitch Rubin.
Thank you, Mr. Blackford. We now open the public portion. Would the applicant like to come and comment on the presentation? Please state your name and address. And
good evening. My name is Mitch Rubin with Big Sky Realty. Appreciate you taking the time this evening. The reason for our request is as our development has moved forward and we're seeing the buildings coming to fruition, the thought of a 550-foot long fence at the property has a few aesthetic issues for us, and that was the main reason for doing this, as well as long-term maintenance. I'm sure you're aware fences tend to have issues, and one almost 600-foot fence we see as an issue long-term. With the narrow, deep lot we have standing inside of that development now, you feel like from a resident's perspective, it could feel a little, I don't know if I'd say claustrophobic, but not as pleasant as if it was just a landscape buffer. But that being said, because of the requirements of the residential driveway that's adjacent, we need to come in and make this request. What we're asking for is, and I should back up. Prior to submitting this, I did have communications with Matt, the property owner of the driveway, and he owns the residential lot behind our property. And in discussing, looking back, I probably should ask him to come in, but in discussion, he was in agreement. He was not a fan of a fence. It would make his drive feel very narrow, and for him, he didn't say anything about snow, but in general, he was against the fence. Even the idea of keeping a 55-foot section on the back end, our intent of keeping a small portion would, as I explained to him, we still are going to have residents with dogs in that building, so this would help keep them from going across the driveway. So that's the reason for keeping a small portion on the back end, and it aligns with the commercial property to our east, as they have a fence that essentially goes to the same location. In the commercial property, I don't know if it's relevant, it doesn't have any windows on the backside either, so they wouldn't be negatively impacted. So for us, it's mainly aesthetic, and honestly, it's maintenance long-term. I think it saves us down the road, maintaining that big of a run. And on the east portion, the west, the reason for wanting to keep that is we do have a dog park. We have buildings closer to that property owner's drive there, and also so had a feeling she would probably not be supportive of us removing the fence, so figured we'd keep it. So hopefully we're working with both neighbors and also improving the appearance from the road and for our residents.
Thank you, Mitch.
Thank you.
Have a seat. We're going to open it up for the public comment. I do have a speaker slip for Colin. She's good. Thank you, Colleen. We now close the public portion. Is there any questions from the commission? Mr. Hicks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Rubin, you mentioned that the residential driveway had some comments that, and maybe I missed it, but does the commercial owner to the east, did they have any comments on the proposed plan?
We didn't speak with them, but my understanding is the only, per code, the requirement is due to the residential nature. I mean, we have a good relationship with the neighbors throughout this development, so.
You have no reason to believe they'd be opposed to?
I've never seen one back there. I mean, it's an auto shop and they have no windows, and I've honestly never seen one except someone cutting the grass.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Any other comments? Mr. Mako.
Kind of in keeping with tonight's theme, what type of plantings are we talking about?
So, in reviewing the landscape plan, it is a spruce, Norway, and I'm sorry, I'm terrible at trees. I did write it down, taking notes from the last one. Norway and a white is how it's called out in the landscape plan. So essentially, and we will end up with a decent density, I think, with the landscaping, because they are, so you have about 475 foot equally spaced is the change from the landscape plan, which is on the design review request, I believe. So equally spaced, you're gonna have a tree every 35 foot, and my limited research says they could be as wide as 10 to 20 foot. So it's still gonna be a decent screening. Prefer arborvitae.
Thank you. No other questions?
Thanks, Ms. Mako. Hearing none, do I have a motion for the variance application?
And just for clarity, this is a recommendation, not an approval.
No.
that was an error.
That was an error.
It's approval, not a recommendation.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, I move to approve item V-0009-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Is there a second?
Second, Greenberg.
Thank you, Mr. Greenberg. Is there any discussion on this no amendment motion?
I'm in favor of the screening. I tend to favor landscape screening in lieu of hard fencing, especially in conditions like this. I agree that it could potentially feel, fairly claustrophobic, and so much as the applicant has discussed this with neighbor, and they're in favor, I'm also in favor.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Hearing no other comments, roll call, please.
Soriano,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca.
Yes. Motion passes. Do I have a motion for the design review application?
Mr. Chair, I move for approval on item DR-0011-2023.
Thank you, Mr. Soriano. Is there a second?
Second, Tamarkin.
Thank you, Mr. Tamarkin. We have a motion by Mr. Soriano and seconded by Mr. Tamarkin. Is there any discussion? Hearing none. Jeremy, roll call.
Soriano,
Yes.
Tamarkin,
Yes.
Wester,
Yes.
Greenberg,
Yes.
Hicks,
Yes.
Mako,
Yes.
Chapaca.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you for bringing that. Takes us to the unfinished portion. Do we have any unfinished business of record? Hearing none. Any new business? Hearing none, we will go over to the official reports. See if Mr. Roth, anything from the city attorney's office?
Nothing at this time.
Thank you. Mr. Blackford, Director of Planning and Council Liaisons, anything on your mind?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, very much. For planning, I would just let you know that staff would continue to work with our zoning code rewrite consultant. We're making some progress. We're looking at some calendars, and we are anticipating a workshop with Planning Commission and City Council in early, mid-June is what we're targeting. We're working on some topics there for the feedback. So know that we'll be reaching out here in the near future with some possible dates for that workshop. Also, next meeting, we're probably looking at a little bit beefier, more exciting agenda. There's some good projects. I don't think they're controversial, but there are some projects in the Crescent at Central Park area, which we've obviously seen a lot of development over the last few years. And then if I'll just move into council, was at City Council this week. It was a pretty light agenda, except for a couple of zoning items. So to give you all a quick update on the zoning code amendments that you all saw in March and in April, there's, we had a first discussion on those. Those seem to be moving forward. It's up to City Council. There might be some modifications. Obviously, as that progresses, I'll keep you in the loop. But since charter, I believe, says, was it like 30 days from some, so best case scenario, I think it's like a early mid-June is when that would be adopted, and then like another 30 days when it would be effective. So you still might see a couple of repeat variances that we're kind of used to, because it still might be 60 so days before anything's effective. Also had the pleasure of talking about zoning code and uses with City Council, and just how our current zoning code works regarding zoning designations and permitted and conditional uses, and if that's something, Planning Commission wanted to do. Those will change as part of the zoning code rewrite. But in case you're curious, we have 26 different zoning designations. 10 of them are residential and 16 would be commercial of some nature. And the goal of the zoning code rewrite is to really condense that down, maybe cut that in half. That's a lot of zoning classifications for a city of this size and that. So yeah, there was some good discussion with City Council. And that is my update. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Blacksford. Since the mayor is not in a seat, we're going to skip. I do have a comment that I think beating the amended motion one more time helped me. I think I'll get it right next time. Thank you, Mr. Hicks and Mr. Roth, for the clarity and the teaching lesson on that. Any correspondence and actions?
None.
None. Poll members, comments from the board?
No comment.
I have a motion for adjournment. Adjourned.